What if Mothman was real? On the night of November 12th, 1966, two young couples from Point Pleasant, West Virginia, drove out to a place called the TNT area. The TNT area was the site of an old World War II munitions plant that had been closed since the war. The land, the size of a small town, was riddled with old bunkers, crumbling storage igloos, and abandoned rail lines. To the local teenagers, the TNT area was the best place in Mason County to park. The two couples were Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Millette. They were in their late teens and early 20s. They were local kids. They had been to the TNT area before. They knew the roads. Around 11:45 p.m., as they drove past the old North Power Plant, a figure rose from the ground beside the road and ran alongside the car. They told the Point Pleasant Register the next day what the figure looked like. The figure was between 6 and 7 feet tall, with large wings folded against its back and glowing red eyes. The figure made no sound. The driver, Roger Scarberry, accelerated past 90 miles per hour. The figure kept pace with the car. It turned its head and looked at them through the window. The eyes were the only part of the figure that looked alive. The four of them made it to the Point Pleasant city limits. The figure turned away and disappeared. The next day, the Point Pleasant Register ran the story. The Associated Press picked it up. The story went national. By the end of the week, the creature had a name. The creature was called the Mothman. The first sighting, the Scarberry sighting, wasn't the only one. It was the first in a wave that lasted 13 months. Within days, the Point Pleasant Police Department and the Mason County Sheriff's Office were logging reports. Couples in cars. Truckers on Route 35. A group of 5 teenagers who watched the creature land on a porch roof and fold its wings. A man who claimed the creature followed him from the TNT area to his home 6 miles away and perched on his roof for the rest of the night. The descriptions were strikingly consistent. The creature stood between 6 and 10 feet tall, with large wings, sometimes bat-like, sometimes moth-like, and glowing red eyes. It made no sound. It moved fast. It did not seem to threaten. It seemed to watch. The TNT area became a magnet. Visitors came from across the country. Most of them saw nothing. Some of them, including a small Ohio team of paranormal researchers, reported encounters. The Ohio team watched the creature from a distance with binoculars. It looked back at them. The local paper, the Point Pleasant Register, kept a running tally. By the end of 1966, there had been more than 100 sightings. Most of them were at night. Most of them were near the TNT area. Most of them, to the witnesses, were terrifying, but not aggressive. Whatever the creature was, it was everywhere. There's a related story from 1966 that doesn't get told as often. It involves a man who called himself Indrid Cold. In November of that year, around the same time the Mothman sightings began, a strange man was seen around Point Pleasant and the surrounding area. Witnesses described him as very tall, very thin, with a wide, fixed grin. He wore dark clothing. There was a strange quality to his eyes, sometimes described as hypnotic. The man approached individuals. He introduced himself as Indrid Cold. He would engage in conversation. Witnesses said he would predict events that then came true. He knew things about the people he was talking to that he shouldn't have known. He would grin so wide it was unsettling. Then he would vanish. The story of Indrid Cold was collected by the paranormal researcher John Keel, who wrote the book The Mothman Prophecies. Keel met Cold personally. He watched Cold grin at him with teeth that were too wide for his face. Whether Indrid Cold was a real person, a phantom, a projection, or a figment of Cold War paranoia, the story is woven into the Mothman story in a way that doesn't quite make sense unless you take both stories seriously. Cold told Keel the Mothman was a separate phenomenon, a different kind of visitor. The Mothman, in Cold's telling, was not a man. Indrid Cold, in his own telling, was. On the night of October 29, 1967, a small TV newsman from a station in Charleston walked into the TNT area with a camera operator. The newsman was David Javins. The camera operator was a colleague. They were there to investigate the Mothman sightings. They were there to do a story. The two men drove into the TNT area around 9 p.m. They parked near the old power plant. They set up lights. They began to broadcast. The broadcast was live. It went out over the Charleston area. The surviving recordings show a professional, uneventful shot. Then, mid-broadcast, the camera operator screamed. The camera fell. The audio cut to static. The lights died. The two men ran. They made it to the car. They drove. On the way out, the headlights of the car illuminated the figure. It was standing in the road. It was tall. It had wings. It was watching. The two men got out. The camera was retrieved. The recording, by those who heard it broadcast that night, included sounds that have never been satisfactorily explained. The station received no phone calls about the broadcast that night. The staff did not know what to do with the footage. The footage was not aired. Whatever the creature was, it had followed the news crew out of the TNT area. Here's the strangest part of the Mothman story, and the part that makes the rest of it hard to dismiss. In the months between November 1966 and December 1967, John Keel received a series of strange documents in the mail. They were typed, addressed to no one, and contained cryptic messages, lists of names, and references to a coming event. Keel called the documents the Codebook. The Codebook used an elaborate cipher. Keel cracked part of the cipher. The parts he cracked included names of local Point Pleasant residents, some of whom had not yet become publicly involved in the Mothman story. The parts he cracked included references to a bridge. The bridge was the Silver Bridge. It was a suspension bridge that connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to Gallipolis, Ohio, over the Ohio River. On December 15, 1967, the bridge collapsed. The collapse killed 46 people. The Codebook, Keel said, had predicted the collapse. It had named the bridge. The collapse ended the Mothman sightings. The collapse happened at 5 p.m. during rush hour. It was sudden. It was structural. The official reports blamed a single eye-bar failure in the suspension chain. The Mothman was never seen in Point Pleasant again. To some, the creature is still out there. To some, it comes back. The Point Pleasant wave of 1966 to 1967 wasn't the only wave. The Mothman has been reported across the United States and around the world. In Chicago, in 2017, a group of construction workers reported seeing a tall winged figure on a parking garage roof. They called the police. The police, on the public record, did not file a report. The workers have never spoken about it publicly since. In Chicago again, in 2021, a woman reported a tall figure with wings following her car for several blocks. She was not the type to file such a report. She was a state employee with a security clearance. She kept the report to the police. In Point Pleasant, on the anniversary of the Silver Bridge collapse, the Mothman Festival draws thousands. The festival sells Mothman t-shirts, Mothman keychains, Mothman bobbleheads. To the locals, the festival is half memorial, half carnival. To the believers, the Mothman is a real creature. To the skeptics, it is a folkloric memory of an owl. To the researchers, it is a piece of a larger pattern that includes UFOs, men in black, and unexplained sightings going back to the 19th century. Whatever the Mothman is, it keeps coming back. The witnesses were mostly consistent. They were mostly ordinary people. They were mostly not the type to make up stories. The Scarberrys went on to live ordinary lives. Roger Scarberry became a machinist. Linda Scarberry became a nurse. They never made a public appearance about the sighting. They never wrote a book. They never appeared on a Mothman documentary. They told their story once to the local paper and then moved on. Steve Mallette went on to be a plant supervisor. Mary Mallette went on to be a teacher. They also moved on. The Ohio research team, by Keel's telling, dissolved. The team never came back together. Its members drifted into alcoholism, into suicide, into sudden career changes. The Mothman, in Keel's telling, had effects on the people who investigated it. David Javins, the TV newsman, went on to work for decades in broadcasting. He never spoke publicly about the TNT area night again. He died in 2022. His obituary made no mention of the Mothman. The witnesses would prefer to forget. The witnesses are the reason the story survives. The Mothman was a creature with wings and red eyes. It was seen more than 100 times in 13 months in Point Pleasant. It was not aggressive. It was watching. It was gone by the time the Silver Bridge fell. The Silver Bridge was a real bridge. It fell for a real reason, a single eyebar failure. It killed 46 real people. To the believers, the coincidence is the point. The Mothman came to Point Pleasant to warn the people. It was a messenger. The message was about the bridge. To the skeptics, the coincidence is just a coincidence. The Mothman was an owl. The bridge fell because bridges fall. The two things are unrelated. The question, either way, is the same. Was the creature on the road that night in November real? Were the red eyes that followed the Scarberry car for 6 miles real? Was the figure that stood in front of David Javens's car on the night of October 29th real? The question doesn't depend on the bridge. The bridge fell. The bridge is a separate question. The question is about the wings. The wings are the part that doesn't have an explanation. The wings are the part that has to be either real or a story. The sky will not change. The bridge is gone. The wings are still in the question. The question will sit in the space between the road and the wings until one of them is the answer you have been waiting for.